Hello everyone, Weather Jamaica here, and welcome to this updated video on the weather across Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean. It is Sunday evening, May 11, 2025. Now before we jump into it, please ensure that you guys like the video. I'd really appreciate it if you guys get this video up to 100 likes. If you don't know by now, that's how the YouTube algorithm works. We all like the video and then the YouTube algorithm pushes the video out to more persons who are in the path of these tropical systems so that we can keep everyone safe, especially during the peak months of Atlantic hurricane season, that's August through to October. Share this video with your friends, your co-workers, relatives, and even your church brethren, and subscribe if you haven't yet done so. Please ensure that you all utilize the progress bar that's located at the bottom of the video, as well as the timestamps that are located not only in the comment section but the video description, so that you can skip to the points in the video that you want to see the most in order to save time, because we know that the videos over here with Jamaica can be very long. Leave a comment down below letting me know what that has been like in your ear recently. Also feel free to ask any weather related question that you might have about the future of the weather in your specific area. Alright, so let us look at what the next 7 days have in store for us according to the latest Euro and GFS Supercomputer model runs that came out today. So keep your eyes focused on the timestamp right here at the top as we go to the next 168 hours. That's the next 7 days. Keep your eyes focused on Jamaica right here as we look for all of this that we see on the key on the right. That's the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and the greens that represents inches of rainfall. So let's see what's going to be taking place. As we head into 12Z on Monday, which is actually 7 a.m., we see some isolated showers across the far eastern end of the island. We also see an abundance of moisture across the southeastern US down to Florida, the Bahamas, section of the western Caribbean, and Central America. Very interesting. And then on Monday afternoon, we see some rainfall across eastern, central, and western parishes. What does the GFS show? Do we have agreement on both models? On Monday morning on the GFS, we see some isolated showers across the far eastern end of the island. We also see that rainfall that the Euro was showing across the southeastern US, Florida, Cuba, the western Caribbean, and Central America. And then on Monday afternoon, we see some rainfall across the western end. Very interesting. On Tuesday morning, what do we see? Some rainfall across the far eastern end of the island. On Tuesday afternoon, rainfall across more so southern and western parishes. What does the GFS show? Tuesday morning, rainfall toward northeast. Tuesday afternoon, rainfall across eastern, central, and western parishes. What does the GFS, what does the Euro show for Wednesday morning? On Wednesday morning, not really seeing much of anything, maybe some isolated showers across the far eastern end of the island. In the afternoon, look at the greens across the entire island, eastern, central, western parishes with that afternoon convection. Wednesday morning on the GFS, rainfall toward east, toward north, and toward west. Then on Wednesday afternoon, we see that rainfall across eastern, central, western parishes, just like what the Euro was showing. Then on Thursday morning on the Euro, not seeing much of anything across the island. Thursday afternoon, however, we see rainfall across the eastern, central, and western parishes. What does the GFS show? Thursday morning, rainfall across the far eastern end, rainfall toward northeast and toward west. Then on Thursday afternoon, we see that rainfall across mainly central and western parishes. Very interesting. On Friday morning, what do we see? Some isolated showers to our south, to our east. Then on Friday afternoon, we see that rainfall across eastern, central, western parishes. What does the GFS show? Friday morning, rainfall to our west, rainfall to our northeast. Friday afternoon, rainfall across eastern, central, western parishes as well. What does Saturday morning show? On Saturday morning, we see rainfall to our south, rainfall to our north. We also see an abundance of moisture across the northeastern Caribbean, Puerto Rico, the central Caribbean, and the eastern Caribbean. Could get in on some amount of isolated flash flooding too. And we're going to be stopping right here at the end of the 168 hours. So this is valid for Sunday, May 18. And we see an abundance of moisture starting to surround the island. We also see that moisture to the south of Puerto Rico, to the north of the ABC Islands. Very interesting. The GFS, on the other hand, is going to be a bit more robust. 7 a.m. on Saturday shows rainfall across the waters to our west and our east. Then on Saturday afternoon, we see rainfall across eastern, central, and western parishes. And we're going to be stopping it as well at the end of the 168 hours. So this is valid for Sunday, May 18. And just like what the Euro was showing, we see moisture across portions of especially the eastern Caribbean. We also see some kind of airflow pressure right here to the north of the eastern Caribbean. We also see something spinning right here to the south of Guatemala. Very interesting. We don't really see that on the Euro, so it's going to be interesting to see all of this plays out. as we head into the next 7 days. And we know that if we have consensus on both the Euro and the GFS malls in terms of these areas of spin, then we know the hurricane center would have to react and put up a code yellow, if not a code orange, or whatever the case may be. And whatever happens, I'll definitely be here to keep you posted with what occurs. But regarding Jamaica's total accumulated precipitation forecast maps now, both maps right here from the Euro and the GFS are adamant that over the next 7 days, the areas that are going to be getting the most rainfall, as represented by the dark reds, purples into the pinks, that we know means 2 to 5 inches of rainfall, would be areas such as Florida, the Northern Bahamas, sections of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the US and British Virgin Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin, sections of Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Guadeloupe, Dominica, Montserrat, sections of Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, sections of Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, French Guyana, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, eastern Nicaragua, eastern Honduras, and even portions of southern Guatemala and El Salvador getting in on some of that activity. And we know that all of this could definitely trigger some amount of isolated flash flooding, especially considering that both maps are showing something similar. We know that when the Euro and the GFS are highlighting the same solution, the chances are higher for it to actually take place. But we can clearly see the greens into the yellows into the oranges and reds represent at least up to 1 inch of rainfall expected for areas such as the central to the southern Bahamas, central to southeastern Cuba, the Cayman Islands, sections of the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, much of Guatemala, Honduras, much of Nicaragua, Jamaica, much of Haiti, much of the ABC Islands, much of Barbados getting on at least up to 1 inch of rainfall. And we can clearly see that both the Euro and the GFS malls are in agreement with that forecast. I know that when they're in agreement like this, the chances are higher for it to actually take place. But regarding Jamaica's total accumulated precipitation forecast map for the next 7 days, both maps right here from the Euro and the GFS are showing all the rainfall that's expected from now up until Sunday, May 18. And we see Jamaica embedded in these colors from the eastern end to the western end. The blues, the greens, the yellows represents anywhere from 1 millimeter of rainfall up to at least 30 millimeters of rainfall, maybe even more. We see that 43 right there across eastern Westmoreland. And we see that the Euro is a bit more robust than the GFS, especially across the far eastern end. The Euro has more rainfall, the GFS has less rainfall across the eastern end. Most of that rainfall on the GFS is across southern Trelawney, southern St. James, eastern Westmoreland, northern St. Elizabeth and northern Manchester. It's going to be very interesting to see all of this plays out over the next 7 days. And we know that most of this rainfall over the eastern end is going to be during the morning, and most of the rainfall across the central and western parishes is going to be during the afternoon. And we've had that daytime heating. And whatever happens, I'll definitely be here to keep you posted with what occurs, especially on our other social media platforms. Taking a look at the surface map of the Atlantic for this evening, you can still see that the southeastern US is being plagued by that frontal system. You can also see the ridge of high pressure right here that we know is responsible for sending all of the strong easterly trade winds across the main development region through the Caribbean. And if we take a look at the visible satellite images of the Atlantic before we lost sunlight, you can see the frontal system right here across the southeastern US. We see the clouds associated with it, the broad area of low pressure right here across the southern US spinning away. You can see the clouds bring overcast skies, if not some thunder showers. The section of the southern and eastern US states, section of Cuba, the western Caribbean, section of Central America getting in some of that. You can even make out some moisture coming through from east to west into portion of the eastern Caribbean, the usual thunderstorm activity across portion of Hispaniola, Puerto Rico as well. All of these entities pushing from east to west, all courtesy of the ridge of high pressure to the north. We'll be talking about the rest of the Caribbean weather later on. Let us focus our attention on the prediction that was made in yesterday's video about the weather across Jamaica for today, Sunday, May 11, 2025. It was stated that some isolated showers could have been in the forecast of parts of eastern Jamaica on Sunday morning, also affecting sections of some northwestern parishes during the afternoon. And we know eastern parishes, we're talking about those parishes in the county of Surrey, like Portland, St. Thomas, Kingston, St. Andrew, while northwestern parishes, we're talking about maybe Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. And what ended up happening? As early as 7:11 a.m., the Cuban Doppler radar images were posted right here on our Twitter page with the Jamaica, as well as on our Instagram page with the Jamaica, on our TikTok page with the Jamaica, and on our Facebook page with the Jamaica 876. So if you have one of those social media platforms, please ensure that you follow us there as we make posts throughout the day that you can't afford to miss. So the Cuban Doppler radar was showing that at 8:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 7:11 a.m. Jamaica time, we were getting on some amount of isolated activity across sections of St. Mary, St. Anne, section of Trelawney, maybe even section of St. James this morning for sure. Definitely gotten on some unexpected rainfall because the rainfall was predicted for the east and we didn't really get that across the east. It was more so northern parishes. And then the rainfall that was predicted for the northwest didn't really pan out. This was the flow of the clouds being steered from east to west for the most part. We definitely had some clouds across the northwest and the north, St. Anne, Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, maybe just a few isolated sprinkles, nothing significant across second of St. James or Hanover at all. Maybe just a few drizzle here and there in some isolated spots for sure. And I'm sure we can make out the clouds that brought those areas the isolated shore activity, but nothing worthy of being posted at all. And the infrared close-up satellite imagery confirms that we didn't get in on much of any convection today. No high cold clouds was being sheared off, no convection today took place. All we're seeing is the upper level clouds being sheared off from the batch of clouds to the east of the Yucatan and Belize. We see a lot of oranges. All of these are just representing some upper level clouds being sheared off towards the east. Nothing significant taking place at all across the waters of the Western Caribbean. And if we take a look at the live camera from See Jamaica's YouTube channel at around 12:07 p.m. today, we can see that the rear cobra definitely still murky from the rainfall that affected the area for the past week. And we can see people in their vehicles going about their business, definitely dry and sunny for the most part. Nothing significant taking place in terms of bad weather today at all. Taking a look at some of the comments that came in today, we have Marlon_1 God sitting, Clarendon Sunny, Javon Panton, Happy Mother's Day 2025, same to you. And we also have Javon confirming sunshine in Spanish Town, St. Catherine. Alright, so let us reload the very latest still image from the Weather Nerds website. Let us see what's happening right now. The latest still image is showing 0005 UTC, which is actually 7:05 p.m. But this just came out 10 minutes ago, considering that it's 7:15 p.m. right now. And we can see that there's not much of anything being experienced across the entire island. Just that upper level cirrus cloud being sheared off towards the east by that upper level wind shear. And we don't even have any rainfall to talk about. The latest Cuban Doppler radar image, the latest Guantanamo Bay Cuban naval radar imagery, the latest Cayman radar. Let's reload these to see what's happening right now. The latest Cuban Doppler radar seems to be showing 8:10 p.m., which is actually 7:10 p.m. So this just came out 5 minutes ago, considering that 7:15 p.m. right now. Don't see much of anything across the island. We see some isolated shores right here to the southeast of the Cayman Islands. We see what looks like some rainfall across section of Cuba. Let us see if we have consensus. The Guantanamo Bay Cuba naval radar imagery actually showing the consensus for that rainfall across Cuba. Don't see much of anything across northeastern Jamaica or much of the western peninsula of Haiti. Maybe some isolated shores right here and there, especially across the far western end, but that's basically it. Taking a look at the Cayman radar, just like what the Cuban Doppler radar was showing, a rainfall right here to the southeast of the Cayman Islands, but that's basically it in terms of the rainfall right now. Taking a look at what's happening right now according to the live camera here from See Jamaica's YouTube channel, showing halfway through. It's a bit blurry. Let's just see if we can rewind it a bit. But clearly we can see that it is quite looks like a busy Sunday evening in halfway through. We see a bit of a traffic pile up right here. Nothing significant taking place in terms of bad weather. Should continue to be fair for the night. Taking a look at the temperatures right now, we can see about 27 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay, 28 degrees Celsius in Kingston, and by about 4 a.m. on Monday, temperature should dip down to about 25 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay and 25 degrees Celsius in Kingston. Taking a look at the temperature forecast for tomorrow, this map from the GFS is valid for 18th on Monday, which is actually 1 p.m. on Monday, and we can see Jamaica right here embedded in some slight orange that represents at least up to 3 degrees Celsius above normal temperatures. I know the normal temperature for the month of May across Jamaica is around 89 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's converted to degrees Celsius that we use here in Jamaica. That is around 31.6 degrees Celsius. So we should be receiving anywhere from 31.6 at least maybe even up to 34.6 degrees Celsius at most for Jamaica's temperature on Monday. And unfortunately, we have a few maintenance outage advisories here from my JPS online Twitter page that we have to highlight. I know that we have to highlight these because you know that when we're power outages somewhere across the island, it can definitely make the heat feel even worse because we don't have our fan or our AC to cool us down. So if you live or work in these areas, or if you have friends or relatives who live or work in these areas, please let them know that the power outage is coming their way on Monday, May 12, 2025. We're talking about Edge Hill in the parish of St. Anne from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Barracks District in the parish of Portland from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Union Street, Hatfield and Environs in the parish of Manchester from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sections of Salt Pond Road in St. Catherine from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And finally we have Troy, New Hope, Warsop, Mount Happy, John Daggy, Rock Spring, Lankhurst, St. Vincent, Tonkill, Dockle Seed, Spring Gardens and sections of Thompson, Town and Environs, all in the parish of Trelawney from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we have some tips right here to beat the heat as usual. It states here dress down, wear lightweight clothing and use sunscreen. Check on others including children, elderly people with medical conditions and pets. Be cool, stay indoors and make use of fans and air conditioners. Avoid alcohol and caffeine as they can make dehydration worse. Limit non-essential strenuous activity during the hottest part of the day. And I cannot stress enough the importance of keeping hydrated throughout the day. Drink lots of water even if you're not thirsty. And put away those sugar drinks and drink water instead. Taking a look at the dry air map, we know that the dry air is represented by what we see here on the key on the bottom. The yellows, the oranges, the reds and the whites within those areas. We see an abundance of dry air across the waters to the northeast of the US. We see an abundance of dry air across the northern portion of the North Atlantic of the west coast of Africa. A lot of dry air across the Gulf, a lot of dry air across the Bahamas. You know, the dry air is responsible for keeping the atmosphere stable, making it harder for it to rain, making it harder for us to get storms this time of year. But what we like to see is the blues across the intertropical convergence zone of the Atlantic and across the eastern Pacific, some of which is also across the southern and the southeastern Caribbean. We also like to see the yellows. The yellows represent the low end of the scale in terms of dry air. And that's what we want. We want the moist air, we want the low end of the scale in terms of dry air, that we have more rainfall to get, that we can keep water in our pipes. But regarding the Saharan dust forecast, for 18 UTC on Monday, which is actually 1 p.m. on Monday, you can see that the brunt of the Saharan dust is represented by the darker shades of browns that we see across Africa, sections of Europe, Asia. That represents anywhere from a 25 all the way up to 1,000 that can cause very hazy skies, not to mention triggers some of respiratory illnesses in some persons. And we're glad that all that's entrailing across the southern main development region is anywhere from a 1 up to at least a 6, maybe up to an 8 in intensity. Nothing significant. The ridge of high pressure is strong but not that strong to bring us a vigorous plume off of Africa into the Caribbean at all. So we're glad that all of us, most of us over here in the Caribbean, are in the clear for 1 p.m. on Monday. Regarding the wave forecast for tomorrow, not much change. The highest waves should be right here to the south of Jamaica, to the north of Colombia. The purples into the pinks represents 2 to 3 meter wave heights. Even the waters to the east of the Caribbean getting up there with the wave heights as well. But anywhere that we see the light shades of blues to dark shades of blues across the Gulf, Bahamas, the northwestern Caribbean, and the southeastern Caribbean, that's representing anywhere from 0.5 meter wave height all the way up to 1.5 meter wave height. And if we zoom in on Jamaica, we see that it should be up to at least 1.1 meter wave height to the north of St. Anne, 1.9 meter wave height to the south of Clarendon, 1.5 meter wave height to the south of Westmoreland, 1.8 meter wave height to the south of St. Thomas. And the more south we go, the higher the wave height will get as we head into the purples and the pinks. That's 2 to 3 meter wave height territory. And that's because of the winds that are expected. We see the bright greens into the yellows pushing in from east to west across the Caribbean. That represents anywhere from 15 to 25 knots. More for southeasterly flow across the Bahamas into portions of Florida. More for westerly flow across the Gulf into Florida, curving northward. More for southwesterly flow over there. But regarding Jamaica's wind forecast, we see that the winds should be coming in from the east for the most part, looking like east-southeasterly on the south coast. We also see where the air should be piling up, mainly across sections of maybe the western end once again. And we know wherever the air piles up, wherever we have the least amount of wind, that's where we're going to be having all of those clouds building. Then we have that daytime heating, convection, and then we have that rainfall for sure. And with the upper level winds coming in from the west tomorrow, it could favor more of these clouds if we actually get the convection to be pushing off towards the east, if we actually get that convection across the island tomorrow. Now regarding the actual rainfall forecast maps now, this map from the Euro and this map from the GFS are both valid for 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is actually 5 a.m. Jamaica time. And we see the blues represent rainfall across the far eastern end, eastern Portland, eastern St. Thomas. We also see the blues represent rainfall across the waters to the north of Portland, St. Mary, and St. Anne. So, would it be a case like this morning where it's mainly northern parishes, or would it be a case for just far eastern Jamaica getting on the isolated shore? Only time will tell. Let us see what actually occurs. Then by 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's actually 3 p.m. Jamaica time, the Euro is adamant that there's going to be rainfall across eastern, central, western parishes. The GFS is only adamant about these areas shaded in the blues, even dark blues and greens. Very interesting. A significant rainfall if that actually plays out. We're talking about northwestern Clarendon, northern Manchester, northern St. Elizabeth, section of Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney, looking to be getting on the brunt of it. So I guess the forecast is going to be for rainfall across northern and eastern parishes in the morning, and maybe some rainfall across sections of some western parishes during the afternoon. It looks like more so northwestern, but we're going to work with western parishes. We'll see how it actually plays out. If you live in western Jamaica, make sure that you walk with your rain gear for sure. Even the total accumulated precipitation forecast map from the Euro and the GFS, showing all the rainfall that's expected from now up until 10 p.m. on Monday, are showing that it's going to be raining somewhere in Jamaica within the next 24 hours. The Euro, as usual, getting up there with the rainfall totals the most, up to 0.18 of an inch of rainfall in the far east, 0.2 of an inch of rainfall in the central areas, even more so out west. GFS only up to at least 0.19 of an inch of rainfall. Or whatever happens, we'll definitely take it, because we're in the month of May, and we usually receive an increase in the month of May in terms of rainfall as opposed to what we usually receive in April. And in Kingston's bar graph is being shown right here at the top. We usually receive close to 140 millimeters of rainfall for the month of May. In Montego Bay's bar graph is being shown right here at the bottom. We usually receive close to 6 inches of rainfall for the month of May. And I'd like for you to keep in mind that if you'd like to find out what your specific parish usually receives in terms of rainfall for the month of May or for the entire year, you can visit weatherandclimate.com and that website to show you that information. And you can use this nice graphic right here that converts rainfall from inches to millimeters. Know that 1 inch of rainfall is about the same as 25 millimeters of rainfall, so you can do the math yourself. Alright, so that's it for the forecast across Jamaica. Let us focus our attention on the rest of the Caribbean. So as stated, we have an abundance of moisture pushing in from east to west into a portion of the eastern Caribbean as we speak. Definitely going to be wet over there this evening into tonight, if not already. We also see some convection across sections of Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, sections of southeastern Cuba. We also see that rainfall across southeastern US into Florida, Central America, the western Caribbean, and northern South America out there for sure of rainfall. Let us match those clouds to the Doppler radar imagery now. In and around Puerto Rico right now, as of 7:20 p.m., we see some rainfall across eastern Puerto Rico, southwestern Puerto Rico, sections of the U.S. Virgin Islands, northwestern areas. We see some hit or miss isolated shores in and around Antigua and Barbuda, east of Guadeloupe, east of Dominica, coming into section of Martinique. Unloading these images from about 1:30 p.m. today, we saw that section of northern and western Puerto Rico definitely gotten some amount of moderate to heavy rainfall, so too section of the Dominican Republic. And if we look at the Barbados radar, we can actually make out the isolated shores pushing in from the east. Definitely some hit or miss isolated shores coming in as we speak across Barbados. So too sections of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Martinique getting on some of that rainfall, maybe even as far as Dominica and Guadeloupe later on. And don't really see much of anything across Trinidad and Tobago right now. But if you take a look at the weather wave Doppler radar images, you can make out that rainfall that's right there to the west of Florida, pushing in there. Definitely going to be getting in on a soaker. This is that rainfall across section of northern and western Cuba, section of Honduras, section of eastern Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname as well, getting in on some of that. And regarding where the brunt of the rainfall is expected within the next 24 hours, both maps right here from the Euro and the GFS are adamant that from now up until 10 p.m. on Monday, these areas such as Florida, the western portion of Cuba, eastern Nicaragua, eastern portion of the Yucatan, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, section of Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, section of St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, Antigua and Barbuda could get in on the brunt of the rainfall tomorrow. Maybe some isolated shores in and around the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, central to southeastern Cuba, Jamaica, and we can clearly see that both the Euro and the JFS malls are in agreement with this forecast. I know that when they're in agreement like this, the chances are higher for it to actually take place. Alright, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching.